I just want to pose a very human question. If a author of a book or a painter doesn't like their work and is very critical of it, are you to say that that painter or book writer is wrong? No.
Right.
you, that's the
R.J.
same way.
Tolkien.
That's exactly the same way God operates. He creates a thing. He either hates it or loves it, because there's no in between with God, because his judgments are perfect. So if he hates what he just created, he's gonna hate it with a perfect hatred. And if he loves that creation, he's gonna love that creation with a perfect love that you can't be separated from. That's just how God works. It's the same thing with how a author can absolutely hate or love the works they make. More
Yeah.
so, there's more like um there's a lot of painters, like famous painters, that make works, and then when you read their writings, um they'll be like, I hated this. I didn't know why I made this.
Yeah. And people too forget too that the creature creator distinction, that God is other than and far more greater than one can even comprehend. And while he has a personhood, like a person, like he has personhood, and he's bestowed upon us that that property of his, that we are created in the image of God, and he's given us all personhood. But he's also created our ability to reason or think, and uh, our very life that is given to us, and every cell and every atom and every blade of grass and all the hairs on our head. Everything is numbered, not because God counted it after the fact, but because he's in sovereign control, and he writes things out like a book. And that's why it refers to him like as the author and finisher of our faith. And David worded it this way: that I was fearfully and wonderfully knit together in my mother's womb, and all the days of my life are written in your book before one of them came to be. That life is like a book, and God is the author, and everything in it, God is behind every single detail that is way beyond our comprehension, as far as what's going on and all around us in reality. Like, we only got this little small microcosm as a little finite particular in a very limited time and index of time, that we're here. And from God's scope and his mind, it's just so far beyond and vast anything we could even imagine, as far as how intricately things play out for every single individual throughout time that he's created for his purposes, whether good or evil. And what we mean by that is that there are people that he will declare righteous because he's atoned for them, and he foreloved them, and he called them and chose them. And he's also created vessels of wrath and destruction, purposes of for other purposes. He's created all things for his purposes, even the wicked for the day of evil. And so God is in control and in charge of all of us. He's not just a person, a being with a person. He's a other than. He's the creator, and that is the problem. Is sometimes with these free will people, I don't think they really are thinking about that. Like, as God being God, he's not just some spectator of reality. All reality is held up by his word and created by his word. Like, it's everything, and nothing could even move without his say, or function or even exist. So, yeah.
Hebrews 1:3 comes to mind when you said that everything is held up by the power of his word, who being the brightness of his glory and the express image of his person, and upholding all things by the word of his power, when he had made himself purged, when he had by himself purged our sins, sat down on the right hand of the majesty on high. So, and then I'd like to hear your take on Job 2:10, Chris. I'd like for you to point out how this is speaking to a will that is free. Then said his wife, and then this is when Job had the boils, I think, and like things were getting really ugly for Job. Then said his wife unto him, dost thou still retain thine integrity? Curse God and die.
Yeah.
But he said unto her, Thou speakest as one of the foolish women speaketh. What? Shall we receive the good, or shall we receive good at the hand of God? And shall we not receive evil? In all this did not Job sin with his lips. Go ahead.
Yeah. He didn't sin by recognizing that God is sovereign over reality, over all affairs, with the good and the evil. That I create light, I create darkness, I create well-being, and I create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. And the calamity that he's suffering here, we see that in the scripture. In the time of prosperity, be happy. And in the time of adversity, consider, for the Lord has made one as well as the other. And Job experienced both. And even after this calamity, things even got better for him. It says that the latter days were better than his beginning. That God causes all things to work together for good to those who love God and are the called according to his purposes. That God is sovereign over reality, and he works it in such a way that he causes all things, the negative things in life, he can cause them all to work. And only a sovereign God can do that. Again, like only God could do something like that, where all the things in our life that seem to be horrible and bad and, a disaster in a particular way, that he's sovereignly, intricately involved in actually causing those things to work together ultimately for our good. But yeah, it's just that you see God sovereign over reality. If a trumpet blows in the city, did the people not tremble? If a calamity happens in the city, did the Lord not bring it about? Even the winds and the sea obey him. There's nothing that God isn't sovereignly in control of, as far as, working things out according to his own sovereign counsel, whether it be for vessels of glory created for mercy, or vessels of destruction created beforehand.
Yeah, our days are determined, right? Job 14:15. Let me repost that real quick. Seeing his days are determined, the number of his months are with thee. Thou hast appointed his bounds that he cannot pass. And there's another verse that people like to use to, I guess, counter this verse. It's weird how I saw a debate with that guy JP Uncut. He's like, well, there's a proverb that says if you do this, this, and this, you will extend your days. But yeah, but God's still sovereign over that. You know what I mean? Like, you may do these things and extend your life, but I don't think it's saying it's extending it past the point in which God says, in Deuteronomy, I think 32:29, he says, I wound, I heal, I give life, I take life, and no one can stay back my hand. So God's still sovereign over that. Your days may be extended past, what you would perceive that, let me see if I can find the verse too, so I could not paraphrase here, but it's if he does this, his days will increase. Let's see if that does it. That should do it. Proverbs, it is a proverb. It's 9:11. So let's see the verse there. For by me thy days shall be multiplied, and the years of thy life shall be increased. Well, it says for by me, and that's the Lord. So never mind. Not really a point of contention at all. Moving on. Job 23:13. That sounds familiar. But he is in one mind, and who can turn him? And what his soul desireth, even that he doeth. And of course, Isaiah 46:10, declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times past, the things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. You know what this should say from their perspective, since God, and what's interesting is they always actually have this Freudian slip where they change the text and they say, God knows the end from the beginning. Is that what that says? It says he declares it, which means to speak it. And we just read Hebrews 1:3 that things are held up by the power of his word. So declaring means to speak. Well, God speaks his words, So declaring the end, it should say declaring the beginning from the end, right? Shouldn't it say that? If it's just God seeing down the corridors of time, he's declaring the beginning from the end, not the end from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. As Jeremiah says, "O Lord, I know the people's lives are not their own, nor is it in them to direct their steps."
Yep.
And Jeremiah understood that people's lives weren't their own, and it wasn't in them to direct their steps. And free will does teach that basically your life is your own. You can make your own choices, direct your own steps, as far as, the ultimate outcome of things and the scheme of reality, and but it says that their lives are not their own, nor is it in them to direct their steps. And if you think about a lot of things that you see go down in reality, like I've watched a lot of things. I'm an older guy now. I'm going on 49. Actually, I just turned 49. Let me look at my wife and make sure.
Did
right?
you turn 48?
No, I'm 49. I just
okay.
made sure. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I'm bad with numbers. Sorry.
No, you just don't want to think about how old you're getting.
I know that too. I know, it's crazy. Because I certainly don't feel like it. But anyways, I've watched a lot of things through the years. I've seen a lot of news programs and documentaries and stuff, history and stuff, and just I didn't place myself where I am at this point. And I've seen a lot of things where people die young in all kinds of situations, and they're often different countries too. Like they're often places where it's like when you're born where you're born and the family you're born in, you had no choice or will over that. And the situation, the time and the year or the place and the location, and the situation, there's all kinds of situations, and I don't want to get, graphically horrible, but there's just a lot of things that when you see them go down, you're like, man, by the grace of God, here am I, by the grace of God, I'm even alive now. I could have been taken out as a baby. I could have been taken out at 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or 11, 12, and on and on and on from a million different circumstances and situations beyond my control, because I'm sure those people, if you could talk about free will and had a choice, so many of them would say, yeah, I would have rather have gone on and had other, opportunities and things happen in life. But, for whatever reason and God's purpose and his plans and the way things were written out, that's just the way. And I have to see it that way because I can't see it as them having control over it, like so many situations that I see go down in so many different ways. And even in my own life, I don't see myself having control of so many things. So these people to appeal to free will sometimes confuses me. And I think it's the modernism of things, that in modern convenience where you can just get in your car and travel really far. And also the motto of this country that the land of the free, you hear that so much when you're a kid, the land of the free, and you actually begin to believe it. But then when you realize you're paying taxes for everything you own and everything's never really free, and they tell you it is, but it's like,
right.
There's a lot of, it's just, you find out it's really just kind of a motto itself that's not true. But, people just have modern conveniences can make them feel free, the freedom of but, a lot of people think, well, all those people that don't have those freedoms, and throughout human history, or even today in other places of the world, that would, if they could choose, would freely love to be in your position, to have the modern convenience that give the illusion of freedom, But anyways, I'm probably ranting here.
Well, that brings up an interesting point, because I actually saw this really cool documentary on Netflix on how Amazon, like the major, like big wigs over there, like the people that were in advertising, like what the technical mindset on their end of their website and how they organize and arrange everything. It's incredible. And the consumerism. Do you know that Amazon freaking throws stuff out and incinerates it that was never taken out of the box and is like less than a year old? Like stuff that it's cheaper for them to literally throw stuff away than to try to resell it.
Yeah.
And it just shows like these dumpster, like these giant dumps full of unused stuff. And like how many millions of sneakers are made every year. And I'm just like, holy crap, like you can't reverse this. Like God needs to come and destroy everything and start over again. It's the only solution. The way man is going, like the way he's trying to direct his steps anyway. And God's sovereign over that, to show that if it is left up to us, how badly we would screw it up. And they're just making stuff, and people are buying stuff they don't even need. They're just buying it over and over again. And I've done this. I'm not exempt from this. I'm not saying, I'm not too much into consumerism, and you don't have a free will over it, because you get forced into these cyclical things that technology and the way your phone keeps updating and your computer keeps updating, and now the ads get referred to you not by your own choice, they're just in there because you searched it up. And I'm sure there's ways you can turn all that stuff off, but who has the time to figure all that out? We're just lost in this world right now. It's like you can't stop it. You can't stop technology. There's no free will.
Yeah.
I'm ranting now.
Yeah, I know, but you're on this. It's a mind blowing. Like all those big dumpsters behind like Home Depot or Lowe's or Walmart that are concealed. They pour all like items in there that people would love to have, because there's a law that anything's thrown in the trash, people can freely have it. But if you can't get into it and they take it off, then you can't get into it the way they design them. There was this Kmart by me though for a long time. There was a Kmart where they were throwing stuff like just crazy stuff. You go out there, get brand new bikes. One time I got like a gas stove. I just gave a lot of stuff to family. Like get this gas stove I found out of there that they threw away. And it was, probably worth like $1,200, $1,200, this big old gas stove with cast iron grill plates and all this kind of stuff. And just thrown out there because it had one little dent in it.
Sure.
And yeah, we can find stuff all the time until they finally close down or whatever. But there's more than enough stuff in the world to go around for everybody, including food and things like that. It's just that the world system and and the money and stuff is the root of all kinds of evil. And this is the way that things run, and they just throw away brand new stuff that could clothe, all kinds of people or feed them and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I'm sure there's a certain amount of it donated. The one good thing I did find out, because I think I looked it up, that the food that just goes like to expiration, like there's giant carts full of it outside of Walmart. Like they'll take all this stuff out of them. I mean, it is tons and tons of food. And they do donate as much of that as they could, as far as I know. So that's one thing, because what else are they going to do with it? I mean, you can't, we waste more food than any country in the world, but at least I think Walmart does try to attempt to donate what they can before, you get sick from eating it. Why would I go to a box church where if I start talking the way I'm talking to you guys right now, they're going to look at me like I'm a freak show? Like that one time when I'm like, all right, I'll do it. I went out on a limb and I went to a men's Bible study from my barber shop. Well, the very first 10 minutes, I'm talking about the righteousness of God. And the guy says, if I knew I had the righteousness of God, I don't know what I would do. Meaning like he would just go with out of control sinning, So that's just it. This is a person who doesn't even realize that they're the epitome of Romans 10:3 and 4. That they want to go on to establish their own righteousness, not submitting themselves to the righteousness of God. That if it doesn't involve them, they want nothing to do with it. The same way the preaching of the cross is something that free will people think they have to do on their own, that God's not sovereign over it. And if they don't do it enough, more people are going to perish. You people aren't preaching enough, God's sovereign over that. And Jesus even said, the labor is much, but the laborers are few, or the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. And, somehow they work into that you have to take it upon yourself to be a preacher. But Paul said that you must be sent, and that he has given different, members of the body to do the preaching, the teaching, the evangelizing, the pastoring, all these different functions in the body. God's sovereign over it. And if you find yourself doing it, maybe you're just someone who believes. Maybe you're just someone who receives the word with joy, like Martha. She's always busy about works. In Luke 10, I think it's the end of Luke 10. Or was it Mary? Mary was the one who was like, bid her to help me, with preparing dinner or whatever it was. And he's like, no, she's receiving that good thing that will never leave her. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
I think it was Martha.
Yeah, it's Luke 10, right? I think it's the end of Luke 10. And this is kind of a picture of that, like in the sense that people can be busybodies about works, and they're not concerned with being ministered to. Yeah, it's right here. Okay, but Martha was cumbered about much serving, and came to him and said, Lord, dost thou not care that my sister hath left me to serve alone? Bid her therefore that she should help me. And Jesus answered and said unto her, Martha, Martha, thou art careful and troubled about many things, but one thing is needful, and Mary hath chosen that good part, which shall not be taken away from her. But the antecedent verse, I think, says, wasn't there a part where, no, this is a parable. I guess you just have to assume that Jesus was ministering to her. Yeah, you notice how Mary made a choice. See that? She's got free will. Our ministry's done, Chris. Martha chose that good part. Yeah, I love that verse, though. In that context, too, I think both of them are of God. You know? Yeah, you see what I'm talking about there?
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, like that's the thing. We don't deny choices. We make choices all the time. It's just choices depend upon our own nature. Would never choose God when it comes to a salvific choice. You know, within a people that are saved, which both of these people are saved. You know, there's choices we can make. You know, like we don't deny that there's choices that we make all the time. God's not forcing us like puppets or robots. That's just the false conclusion of theirs. But so much of our design and everything is completely the control and will of God, and the things that and where we're placed and this and that, you know. But definitely us knowing God is God's choice, us understanding who he is and believing is his choice. You are my witnesses, declares the Lord, my servant whom I have chosen, that you may know and understand and believe that I am he. Before me there was no God formed, nor shall there be after me. I alone am the Savior. That's how the Bible talks about in terms God choosing. You know, he chooses us to know and understand and believe. It doesn't say, you know, specifically that he chose me. He chose that I would eat chocolate ice cream, you know, and would like that over pistachio. But I can parse that out that is the case. That as far as any choices that I have in reality, they're not independent from the Creator God who creates all the materials by which people create ice cream. And then the people that create ice cream, their intellect and their ability to reason and make ice cream was given to them by God.
Right.
And, yeah. And then when I go to eat ice cream, and I don't choose chocolate over pistachio, like, oh, I like this one because of free will choice. When I experienced them both, I like chocolate better. And I had no choice over that. You know, it was put in front of me and I ate it. And that's because the way God designed things and my palate and the way when I went to eat it, I was like, this is good. You know, wow. You know, when you eat something for the first time, wow, this is good. You know, it's like, you don't just choose to make that reaction happen. Otherwise, you know, I just pick, you know, up a rock off the ground and start licking it, you know, and just say, oh man, look how good this is, you know. So, I mean, we don't, you know, it's not like anything we choose. It's just God's sovereign over everything, you know, and he chooses us to be who we are, and the way things are is because of God's design.
Yeah, you were wonderfully knit in your mother's womb by him, right? Were you not? I mean, for some reason, I guess, you know, they think that the attributes that you contain from birth were somehow something, you were just made a blank slate and then, you know, you went your own way sort of thing. That's not what the Psalms are talking about ever. You know, Jeremiah, all the verses we went through tonight.